Hi, everyone. For those of you who spent the first half of the semester with me, you might be familiar with the work that I presented for my capstone project. I kind of started the pilot study for using text as a way to create an adult learning opportunity. And basically, that was grounded in adult transformational learning theory. And so, when I saw this opportunity to look for a conference to speak at, that was kind of the path that I originally took. And I did find a conference. It's actually called Transformative Learning. It is the 13th annual conference that's going to be happening at the end of March in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And this really felt like a good fit for me, and I put together an abstract and have submitted to be a speaker at that. And my part of my proposal actually allows me a little time at the end to introduce my capstone findings, and I just kind of feel like this would be hopefully it gets accepted, and it feels like it'd be a great way to round out this master's program in rhetoric, writing, and digital media studies. But Dr. Allen challenged me to push a little further and dive into our class debate on making meaning and doing that through the lens of rhetorical and compositional theory. So with that in mind, when I was reading Douglas Hess's article in Module 5, it was Journals and Composition Studies 35 Years After, there was a line that really jumped out at me. And so I came across, it was a special issue of Literacy in Compositional Studies. And it was a compilation of articles on literacy and composition over an entire lifespan. So I'm going to kind of give you some highlights from my abstract that I've kind of thrown together on that, because this really turned out to be super fascinating for me. Not only did it look at aging as a phenomena that's more than a demographic category, but it also just looked at developing literacy over an entire lifespan, the pros and cons, mostly pros, of maintaining literacy, but lots of case studies, just lots of rich information. They took a really good look at age studies, and it really got me started thinking about my certificate that I just completed in Women's and Gender Studies, where we looked at gender and kind of also led into disability in my work of looking at disability studies. As many of you know, I've also taken a really hard look at my own reproductive history and just kind of how the rhetorics of that are kind of sitting in our society. So it's kind of, pulling a lot of some things that I've done over the course of this entire program. And as many of you know too, after my nest emptied, I came back to grad school. So I am just approaching the halfway mark of my 120-year lifespan. And so I'm going to read you a little piece here that, according to societal messaging, I am an older aged adult trapped in a body that's medically declining. And I lived the first half of my life, as I was saying, with gendered restrictions and neoliberal messaging. So I am going to be rebelling against all geriatric characterizations. I am not going to be an old lady. I am breaking free of myths and stereotypes about life after 60, and my definition of adding birthday candles will belong to me. And as I move along here, I'm collecting tools and techniques to maintain and enhance my literacy in a world that's constantly changing. Sarah Arroyo's work has really spoken to me on becoming an electorate learner and how I'm going to be engaging with literacy. So, my big questions that came out of this are really, I liked them so much, I'm going to find them and read them to you. It's really What literacies will I acquire that aren't even yet defined in our society and in our academic studies? And I'm wondering what tools I'm going to be using as I do navigate this whole electric learner thing that goes much farther than just digital literacy. So with that, I ended up, in the course of all this, kind of coming up with this phrase that I think is going to be my next act, and that is later literacies. I might have just mentioned it to you a moment ago, but I'm just really curious as to what other literacies I will obtain over the next decades of my life. And I mean, later could be looked at those things that we do after K through 12 or after our undergrad. I mean, there's a certain aspect that I do believe we have basic literacies of just reading and writing so that we can learn to express ourselves and we can learn to share information amongst each other. And I do think younger students are getting the digital literacy, or should be getting the digital literacy tools. Those are just basic that should be coming right along with me. So when I look at the term later literacies, it's just those things that happen after formal schooling is over and are things that we as adults just need. Like, we need the literacies, we need financial literacy, emotional, partnering literacy. Then we move into parenting, just managerial of our own time, as well as the things that when we work with other people. Those to me are all other literacies, and the one that really gets focused on in age studies is health literacy, and the fact that age is only really being defined as this declining, medically declining body that we live in, and I want to push against that. I plan to get outside the box on all of that. But later could also mean, as Mary Catherine Bateson refers to in Composing a Further Life, which is really what got the title of this special issue going. They refer to her a lot. She calls it adulthood too. And quote, "When you reflect that you have done much of what you hope to do in life, but it's not too late to do something more or different." So I also want to think about later as just what Ichi Lee refers to in his book, I've Decided to Live 120 Years, which, by the way, I'd already decided that before I came across that book, but that's another story for another day. But he breaks life into two parts: the cycle of success, which is about the first 60 years, where everything is about doing all the things we're told we should do, create a career and a family. And then he calls the second half of life the cycle of completion. And those are all those things that you want to do to leave your legacy, and the things that you put off because you didn't have time in those busy years. So, later could also be looked at the cycle of completion. But, for me, later has a lot of meanings. I mean, right now I'm in the go-go years. My husband and I have just watched our kids are getting ready to launch. He's getting ready to possibly move out of his day-to-day aspects of his career. And, so the go-go years are now, before we move into the slow-go years, which is where I imagine I'm going to come back and start teaching, until it's the no-go years. What will all those literacies look like as I move through those stages? So that's a little bit of what I've been working on. It's an interesting look at a different time in our lives of developing literacy. So I hope those of you who've stumbled onto this find the annotated bibliography something of interest. If not now, you put it away for later. So have a great holiday season, everybody. It's been a good semester. Maybe some of you I'll see in the capstone starting in January. Thanks so much.